Well, hello and thank you for stopping in today. This video is going to be how to show you how to set up a DX6 transmitter to perform both Crow and Camber functions. I am going to be using my Radian Pro as an example. So first, let me show you that it can be done. Alright, I have mixed in 2 mixes for Crow and 2 mixes for Camber onto one switch respectively. So Crow, one switch, one flick of the switch. There's your Crow. Aileron up, flap down. There's your Crow with a flick of a switch. Now for Camber, I programmed 2 mixes into a different switch. There's your Camber. Alright, well you saw it with your own eyes there. It can be done. So there's a few things that we have to do, and not only will this work on a Radian Pro, this will work on any 5 or 6 channel airplane that you have. Alright, I'm going to get into that later on in the video. First I want to show you how to do it, and then we can talk about that a little bit later. There's several things we have to do. We have to go through the menu and change what your plane setup is as far as the ailerons and flaps. And then I'm going to show you how to change your servo connections in the receiver to make it work. And then I'm going to go again step by step, detailed process through the transmitter in the mix section on how to make this work properly. So let's get right after it. Okay, first go ahead and get it onto the plane that you want to change into Crow or Camber. Even though in this particular case I'm setting up the Radian Pro and it is a sailplane or a glider, when you go to sailplane you cannot use your flaps switch. It does not give you any option to program that. And again, you may be able to do this process in sailplane, but I'm going to show you again how I know it will work, so make sure you're in airplane mode. Alright, the next thing you need to make sure, aircraft type. When you go into aircraft type, it gives you your wing configuration and your tail configuration. So I need to change this. It starts out in normal, and then cursoring your scroll wheel to the right. Instead of selecting one aileron and one flap, because what you have with this particular plane is you have a Y connector for your flaps and you have a Y connector for your aileron, which effectively make them one each. And we're going to do some changes with the wiring we'll get to in just a minute, but select 2 aileron and 1 flap, click on it again on your scroll bar, and then go back to the list. And that is it for your transmitter setup. Make sure you're in airplane mode, 2 aileron and 1 flap. Now let's get into the wiring aspect of your receiver. First of all, let me stop for a second. Whether you're using a Spectrum AR600 or comparative receiver, it could be one of the AS3Xs, it doesn't matter. This happens to be a Lemon RX, which I have gone to. The AR500s are $50. A Lemon RX 6-channel receiver is $13. I can buy 3 of these compared to 1 Spectrum. Or you can use one of the Orange RXs, which are $5. I have used those in the past. I will never use them again. I have had extremely bad luck with reception with those. As far as this Lemon RX, this is an older one. They now have diversity antennas on them. Gone up a little bit in price, but they still work well. I have a Lemon RX in one plane with over 400 flights, and another Lemon RX in another plane with over 300 flights. I have never lost signal, and that counts going out pretty far at distance. I haven't ever done an official quarter-mile, half-mile range test, but this will work out to as far as I can see the plane. So that's just a little helpful tip for you. But they're all laid out the same. Orange RX, Lemon RX, or the Spectrum receivers as far as the gear layouts or the channel assignments. So again, let's go back to 1 aileron and 1 flap. That's probably how you're set up if you're going into this. So you have in that setup your flaps Y with your two servos connected to it is in the aux1 port, or the 6th port, and your aileron Y is in the aileron port with both connected here. And when you go into the 2 aileron and 1 flap system, all you have to do is unplug your Y connector for your flaps from port 6 and plug it into the gear. The second step, unplug your aileron, your left aileron, and make sure it is your left aileron, otherwise this won't work. Take that out of the Y connector and plug it into aux1. Okay, that's it. You just switch those two. Now, you want to keep your right aileron connected to the second aileron port right here, the number 2 port. You can either unplug it from the Y and lose this 5 gram weight of the Y connector and plug it directly in, or you can leave the Y connector if you want to. It doesn't matter. In some situations, like for example on my P51, when I unplug the left aileron, it doesn't have enough wire to reach the receiver, so I had to put in an extension. So that might come up for you. So again, it's pretty simple. Let's use this paper right now. You had your flap plugged in to port number 6, the aux1, and you had your aileron Y with both servos connected to number 2 aileron. Now you've unplugged your left aileron and you've plugged it into the aux1, and you've just taken your flap and moved it over 1 position. And I want to make a point here. The little metal connectors that you can see on your servo connector here, they're only visible on one side. They always go away from the bind port. So make sure you get things plugged in correctly. If you reverse that, it's not going to work. Okay, that's all there is to it. You have set up to channel, 2 ailerons and 1 flap, and you've basically only changed the location where 2 wires plug into your receiver. Now all we have to do is program the mixes into the transmitter. Click once on the cursor, scroll right till you get to mixing, and scroll down to the first mix 1 channel. The first thing you want to do is highlight curve by pressing once here, and now you see switch is inhibited, and you can't go past that with the scroll bar until you change this first INH inhibit in the box. Highlight that, and this is the key. Scroll all the way over to the right. The second one from the end is on. Select it. Move to the next one, and we're going to do ailerons right now, and it's going to be the left aileron we want. It's right, elevator, rudder, flap, left aileron. Highlight it. Now you can go down to select the switch you want, and depending on which switch you select. Now I have on my transmitter, I have my upper switch here, my C switch is elevator, of course my flaps here, my ailerons are here, my rudder is here, my throttle cut is back on H, so my 2 available switches are A and B, and you can also use the bind switch button, but you have to actually hold it down to keep it functioning. So I'm going to use gear switch A to mix to. So all I have to do, highlight that, is flick the switch A. You could use switch B if you like, or whichever open switch you have. And if you don't want to do it that way, you can just scroll through and select. So I have my switch. I like it in the down position for off and the up position for on. That's just my personal preference, and you can set it how you want. So now you have, let's go back, you have on, you have left aileron. The next thing you want to change is your percentages right here, and for the aileron you want to go up, and you can set that depending on what plane you have for whatever percent you want, and the mix has to be on in order for it to transport into the plane. So let me show you what's happening. Let me go back to 0, and I will show you the ailerons move. Now you're not going to see anything move while you have your designated switch in the off position. Now, I'm using switch A. I'm going to flick it to on. And I am going to scroll to the right to give positive values to have the ailerons come up. And you can watch the ailerons come up. And I'm just going to go ahead and bring it all the way up to 90, well, I'll go to 95%, 96, 95 there. And you see how that works? Now I'm going to switch them off, the mix.
Mix off.
Mix on. Okay?
Mix off.
It's that simple. All right, we've got the ailerons done. So let's go back into mix. Go to mix 2, select it. Again, go to normal. Click on it. Go to inhibit. Single click with the right thumb there. And we want to go all the way over to on. Select it. Oops. Go to the second inhibit. Now we're doing flaps. Select it. Let's go down to the switch. We're on switch A in this particular case. Here's switch A. Now again, we want to go to this box. Now, depending on how your flaps are, in this case they are reversed. So if your flaps are in a normal position, you would want to go to negative positions. But since this is reversed, we want to go to positive, which is going to send them down. It's just the opposite. And let's see how that looks on the plane. Again, in order to watch things happen, you need to flick your switch so the mix is on. And we're going to go positive values. And I'm up to 87%. I'll go 100 so you can see it definitely. And we'll go mix off, mix on, mix off, mix on. Now I can't tell you exactly how far your aileron is going to come up versus your flaps down. It's going to depend on what type of aircraft you have. In this particular case, the flaps are longer than the ailerons, and they have a little bit more meat to them in the body. So you're going to have to experiment. And I would suggest experimenting at 20% on each at first. See what happens, and just keep adjusting from there and kind of figure out your plane for what you want to do. Also, if you find yourself pitching upwards or downwards, you can adjust your aileron or your flap accordingly, or you can use another switch, or excuse me, another mix to mix in some aileron or some elevator to countermand the upward or downward pitch. And you can assign that so you can act to the same switch, so you can actually have 3 functions on one switch. But again, that'll take some experimentation, and you can do that with camber as well. But you got to consider that Crow takes 2 mix switches, stations. The Camber takes 2 mix stations. And if you throw in an elevator mix, that's all 5 of your mixes. So you're limited in a sense. So let's get on to camber. All right, now for camber. This is what we're going to do. You've only got 1 empty switch left, so let's go to mixing. And we're going to go to mix 3. Do the same thing. Select normal. Go to inhibit. The first one on the left. Scroll to the on position. Select it. Now we're going to go to aileron again. Left aileron. Highlight it. Now this time I'm going to use switch B, or in your case, if you use different switches than I do, you're going to have one again for elevator, flaps, rudder, aileron, and probably, hopefully, throttle cut. So you're only going to have 1 available switch plus the bind button. So in this case, I'm going to go to switch B up here on the top. That is going to be my camber switch. So I'm going to go to switch B, bang. I'm going to go back and highlight this box again. Now instead of going positive values to make it go up, I'm going to go negative values. And see that? aileron is going down. And I'll over exaggerate it so you can see it. But I'm only going to go 10% with those because in camber, I have a friend of mine who's flown a lot of gliders. He says you really don't want to exceed 10% on the ailerons because you can cause tip stalling. So I'm going to leave it at minus 10%, which really isn't very much. Deselect so it stops blinking. And we're going to go back. And now we're going to go down to mix 4. Go to normal. This time, same thing, go to on. And now we're going to go to flaps. Oops, forgot to highlight it. Deselect it. There we go, flaps, click. Go down to switch B. Now we've got it.
Flight mode 1, mix off.
And I am going to go up again. Starting to sound familiar? Go to that box. Now since my flaps are reversed on this particular plane, I need them to go up. Positive values. And I'm just going to switch the camera over here and see, watch the flaps go down. And that is 100% right there. Now I'll give you a little bit different camera angle here. And I've accentuated the drop of the aileron so you can see it a little better. That's camber on, camber off. Camber on, camber off. Crow on, crow off. Crow on, crow off. All right, that is all there is to it. All right, now you have all the principles and all the techniques and all the right information to make this work. And I mentioned earlier that you can make any 5 or 6 channel airplane work like this, and that's a fact. And let me show you how a 6 plane works real quick. For example, if you have a plane like this with electric retracts, the landing gear is going to be in the 5th port, which is the gear port. So in this case, you would have to go without your retracts being retractable. Just go ahead and put them down so you can take off and land, and then unplug the servo wire from that 5th port, the gear port, and do the exact same thing that I just showed you. Take your flaps out of aux 1, plug it into the gear port. Take your left aileron, plug it into aux 1, go through the same process, and it will work. I tried it on this plane, and I got Crow on this plane. I don't know why I'd want camber because I'm not going to be gliding around with it. So it is possible to make a 6-channel aircraft into to have Crow capabilities. Now for you Sport Cub owners, this is a 5-channel airplane. Again, any plane that you have with flaps, it's going to be able to work. You just have to rearrange the wiring, set up 2 aileron and 1 flap, and of course you're going to be in acro. Now with this, I have a light package on this plane, and you can see them working. And on my landing lights,
gear down.
I'm using my A switch.
Gear down. Gear up.
And so I have all 6 ports in my receiver taken. Now, if I wanted to make this capable of doing Crow, I would have to do the same thing as with the retracts. I would have to unplug my lights from the 5th port and then do the wiring switch again. So you can do it. You can do it with any plane as long as you have a DX6 and a compatible receiver, whether it's an AR whatever or an AS3X model, a Lemon RX, or an Orange RX. It just doesn't matter. You can do it. Hold on. I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this. I really hope you learned something, and even more importantly, I hope I communicated it in a manner that you could understand. Sometimes when you're the communicator, you think other people are understanding when it doesn't get through. So if you have to watch this 1 or 2 times to really get it, do so. But hey, you can set Crow with a DX6. Thanks again for watching, and good luck up there.